Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2022 film Skinamarink. It's a Shudder exclusive and it's coming to Shudder on Thursday, February 2nd. I'm going to tell you up front, this is a hard movie to rate, to be honest, on my 5-star scale. Because if you ask me how I felt about the film watching it, I hated it. But I thought about it a lot after the film and the experience of it, and things changed a little bit. So this is very hard to rate. I've not seen a film like this before. It has echoes of other things I have seen, but it is its own thing, which there's a lot to be said for something like that. But I'll get more into it, what I did like, what I didn't like. But this is a no-spoiler review, since it's a newer film. It's in theaters at the moment, and then it's hitting Shudder on February 2nd. So no spoiler review. Written and directed by Kyle Edward Ball. This is the individual's first feature. This is also a Canadian film. Synopsis, I don't want to give you too much, but I'll just kind of give you what's already been thrown out there by, trailers, IMDb, Shudder, all that stuff. It's basically about two kids who wake up in the middle of the night and their parents are not there. And the house is kind of weird. It's dark, the windows and doors disappear, and it's weird, okay? And obviously there's a horror to the film. Now, I don't want to give you any more story to it because it should be experienced for yourself. If you plan to watch it, this isn't going to be a film for everyone. And honestly, it's not a film for me. This is not the type of film I would ever watch again. If anyone wanted me to watch it with them for any reason, I would say no, I'm out, because the experience of actually watching it is not fun for many reasons. Some because of good filmmaking, some because of bad filmmaking. But I'll kind of get into that as I go on. The opening of the film is extremely boring. Not only is it extremely boring, but it just throws you into whatever it is you're experiencing. And you're kind of like, okay, how did we get here? How is this footage being shot? Because it seems found footage-y. This is kind of found footage-y, but it's not really found footage. So it's kind of this weird in-between. So it doesn't even fit into a subgenre of horror. It may even create a new subgenre of horror. I don't know. I could actually see this doing that, starting a whole subgenre movement. I don't know what you would call it. I don't know. I don't even know what you would call it. But, it's extremely slow. You're thrown into it not knowing anything. And I will tell you, there's not a ton of story to the film. There is a story, though. There is story. There's not a ton to it. This film is mainly experiential. That's the main point, which is why there isn't a whole lot of story to it. So that's why I'm so conflicted on it, because I'm like, the way I experience film, I watch horror films for story. So I want to see cool things, and I want interesting story. This does not have, it has kind of interesting story, but it doesn't have much story to it. So it's definitely not for me. It's definitely a film that frustrates the hell out of me for that reason. That said, I know there are a lot of people out there who are just for the experience. And so this film probably will be for you in that sense. The film takes place in 1995, yet they make it look like it's the 70s. Which I thought was a weird thing, because why would you put it in 1995, and then from a film standpoint, it looks like it's the 70s? It feels very confused visually for that reason. And when I say they make it look like it's the 70s, the grain of the actual film itself, and the sound of the popping and stuff of it being older film, which also makes it seem very kind of found footage-y, even though it's not really found footage, But yeah, there is a severe lighting issue in this film. I will say that. I know that was by design, but that is something that drives me wild. I want to be able to see things. That said, there were certain instances where that actually played extremely well in the film's favor for how I experienced it then. So in the end, I was like, man, I hate this. I wish this was better lit. But then I was kind of like, okay, well, I get the point of it. It was very much intentional, and it kind of works in certain instances, so I kind of forgive it for that reason. There's no setup to establish anything, no story or anything. You also have no idea how any of it's being captured. Kind of already talked about that. It's confusing at first. You're just kind of like, okay. I've literally seen people online saying, that they shut it off after 10 minutes, which I then saw someone after that saying, how is it that you turned it off after 10 minutes when it's only in theaters at the moment? That is because there was this big snafu where apparently it was shown at an online film festival, and instead of making it view only, it was downloadable. So some jerk downloaded it and dispersed it on the internet. So a lot of people have seen this film even prior to me seeing it as a screener for Shudder. So that's why. But yeah, I would understand why some people would just be like, nope, I'm not doing this film, because not a whole lot goes on in it. The pacing is garbage. Like, this is one of the worst paced films I've ever seen in my life. And that's one of the reasons that I can't give this film very good marks, because it's an hour and 40 minutes with credits, and it has no right to be that long, because there's almost no story. You know, I understand it's an experiential film, but you don't need an hour and 40 minutes at all to tell this story. It should have been way shorter. And honestly, I kind of think this film would play a lot better as a short film. You know, 30 minutes max. 30 minutes max. So this film needed at least an hour and 10 minutes cut off of it. So that'll tell you, if it drives you nuts when a film is poorly paced, you probably don't want to watch this film. Because it drove me crazy watching it. I was just like, oh my gosh. The sound design is very good in this film. Now, one of the big things is sound design really stands out because there's a lot of, I don't want to say silence, because the sound design fills the silence, but when it comes to music, silence. There's a lot of that. And that does really help with building these like creepier atmosphere moments, a lot of dread and intensity, which I'm a big fan of that. So I love how restrained they are with the actual music in it. And for the most part, the only music they're really using is music from like cartoons, like very old cartoons that are public domain at this point. So they didn't have to have any copyright issues. They even put some text in the beginning of the film about that everything in there is you know, not copyrighted at this point because it's public domain. But yeah, I mean, the sound design is phenomenal with this film. And it is all about sound design for the most part. You know, some visuals, but a lot of sound design. This leans so heavy on sound design. So if you're someone who really appreciates that, this may be a film that really interests you. The camera seems to show you the most boring portions of any location it's shooting. So for the most part, I mean, there are some moments where you're seeing very interesting visuals, very creepy visuals, scary visuals even for some people. There are a lot of moments, especially early on in the film, where it's just showing you the weirdest angles and very limited amount of stuff in whatever room it's shooting. It's all shot in one house. And so you're literally like looking at just like a light on a ceiling for like an extended period of time. Or you're looking at a camera angle from the floor and you're just seeing people's feet. And that's like it. So if you're really looking for very engaging visuals throughout a film, this won't be for you at all. And that's another thing that kind of bothers me as well. For that reason, overall, it doesn't look good. This film does not look good. The fact that it is shot to look like it's from 1995, but looks like it's actually the 70s, plus the really weird camera angles, plus the really poor lighting, it looks terrible. The film looks awful. But once again, if you don't really care about that and you're into some things that are kind of like found footage-y, or you're just down for the experiential aspect of it, you'd be fine with it. Nothing interesting happens until about 35 minutes in, and then it goes back to being boring, and then about an hour in, it goes back to having something interesting, and then it goes back to being boring for a little bit, and then it pops up with some more interesting. Like, it has way longer stints of boring than it does interesting, in my opinion, but once you're done with the film, you keep thinking about it, or at least I did. And you think about the overall experience of it, and you think about the impact of it, but you also want to know kind of like the meaning behind it. Although I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I have a few other things to say. There are some moments that do a really good job of putting you on edge. This film actually, because of the way it's shot and a lot because of the sound design, spiked my anxiety. I actually have like legitimate anxiety problems, and it literally spiked my anxiety. So if there are people out there who also have anxiety and you don't want to experience any sort of spikes in it, I don't know if this film would necessarily do that for you, but it did for me. And once again, it's about the experiential aspect of it. It's a lot because of the sound design, some because of the visuals and how much you can't see. So for that reason, I think that that's an achievement with the film for sure. There's barely any dialogue in the film, and whatever dialogue there is just giving you the smallest hints at what's actually at play. In addition, they're showing you portions of these old cartoons I already mentioned, and those are filling in a little bit of story aspect. So between the sparse dialogue and the bits of the cartoon, you can piece together the story, or at least what you think is the story, but that's not necessarily going to tell you what the ending is and what the film on like a deeper metaphorical plane actually means. Just saying. I have a theory on metaphorically what it's about, other than just being like experiential, but we can talk about that in the comments if people want to. And literally, like, spoilers in the comments, go ahead, whatever you have to say about it. There are some creepy aspects and some portions that make you feel uncomfortable, mainly because of the quiet. Already kind of talked about that. They do a good job of kind of maintaining that kind of tense, on edge feeling throughout the film. So that's a pretty good achievement in my opinion. You will have way more questions than answers when this film's over. You really, really will, because it doesn't answer like anything for the most part. But, you know, people can get their own answers. And that's one of the big things. Like, John Carpenter has been quoted as saying that, like, he won't tell people the meanings behind certain films that he's done or any films he's done, because film experiences are personal. And everyone should be allowed to kind of interpret the films however they want to. He's just making that available. And I think that's kind of cool. And this film kind of, I feel like, falls into that category to a degree. It does make you keep thinking about it afterwards, which there's very much something to be said for that. If you like watching very long shots of someone's house in the dark, then this movie visually is for you. That's what I hate about it. Like, visually, I hate the visuals in this film. It could have been done in a much different way and had the same amount of impact. Could have been as experiential. I don't really understand why they went the route of being like, this is 1995, but it looks like the 70s. A lot of choices I just don't get, but it still came out to be a film that will wow a lot of people. It doesn't wow me, but I know it will wow a lot of people. I've already heard that. It's got its place in horror. It definitely does. The last thing I have to say about this is it plays to me like a very early film project done by David Lynch. Like, when David Lynch was in film school, like something very unpolished. He was just trying to figure out like his style and like what he would do. It feels very much like early, unpolished, I don't really know what I'm doing David Lynch, because it looks terrible. Like, and the pacing is garbage, but David Lynch has pacing issues anyway. But a lot of people like that about him, so maybe a lot of people like this for that reason. So it's hard. Out of 5 stars, half stars in play. I feel like the most fair thing I can do is go 2.5 stars on it, because there's a lot from a film standpoint I really dislike about this film and is very problematic. But I also understand what it's trying to do, and there were some things that it really achieved well. So that's why I feel like the only fair thing for me to do is put it smack in the middle, 2.5 stars. But I'm very interested to hear what other people have to say about this. Actually, very interested to hear what other people think about this film. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Like I said, spoilers, all good. And we can chat it out. Love it, hate it in between. Just let me know why you did or didn't like it. Just like a sentence or two is fine. Because just saying, like, I liked it, I didn't like it, that doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not going to comment on that. I'll give it like a little like, and that's it. Because thanks for visiting. Do me a quick favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That's your best way to repay me for this free content. If you like any video I've ever done, including this one. Also hit the notification bell button, because then you know when I'm putting up new videos. If you want to know when I'm putting up new videos and watch my stuff. But regardless, I really thank you for taking your time to watch this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.